We will proceed, and the next speaker is Triestino Marinello. He will be speaking about a subject of the ICC under attack, the struggle for justice and accountability during the genocide in Palestine.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Many thanks to the organizer for the invitation. Distinguished members of the jury, it's an honor for me to appear before you to speak about the struggle for international justice in a context in which impunity has long provided the fertile ground for the most serious crime. I speak not as a distant observer, but as someone who, together with Raji, Surani and Shantal Meloni, has the privilege of bringing the voices of Palestinian victims from Gaza to the Hague. Parents who have buried their children, relatives of journalists, doctors, humanitarian workers and human rights defenders killed in direct or indiscriminate attacks. Survivors who have lost the entire family and still search through the rubble for the names of the missing. On behalf of entire communities who, despite everything, continue to believe that justice is still possible, we bring the voice of relatives of victims of starvation, and we had the possibility recently to document how Israel concretely put in place a policy of deliberate starvation by preventing the access of essential goods in the Gaza Strip. I'm referring to food, water filters, heavy hospital devices, drugs, including insulin for children, anesthetics, in a context in which 10 children on a daily basis are subject to amputation of one or more limbs without anesthetics. They are preventing the access of croissant, labeled as luxurious goods by the Israeli Authority, and as such, Palestinians do not have any right to get access to such luxurious goods. For Palestinian victims, the ICC has represented a fragile but vital thread of hope. The belief that in a world of double standards, one institution may still uphold equality before the law. The issuance of arrest warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant marked a defining moment for international justice. It was a historical step for Palestinian victims for whom the ICC remains the only avenue for justice. It was a historic moment for Palestinian civil society organizations, particularly the Palestinian Center for Human Rights and Al-Mezan, which have documented crimes under immense pressure. Their offices have been destroyed. Together with Adamir and Halak, their organizations have been sanctioned by the Trump administration only for seeking justice. Their staff has been killed. Ihab, with his wife and his two daughters, Rima and Najima, 3 and 6 years old, Noor, with 70 family members, including her 2-year-old daughter, Dana, with 39 family members. Arrest warrants were also historic for the court itself, which for the first time ever appeared to challenge the paradigm of the justice of powerful, where international law is rigorously applied to some and excluded for others. Yet, this historical step cannot hide the serious shortcomings that have marked the court's engagement with Palestine. It took 12 years to the ICC to open a formal investigation, a delay that has caused profound disillusionment among victims and reinforced the perception that justice is selective. The first prosecutor, Ocampo, admitted that he would never authorize a case that could disturb, using his words, the United States. When prosecutor Fatou Bensouda finally opened an investigation, its scope was extremely narrow, confined to specific incidents, failing to address the broader context of systematic oppression, collective punishment, and apartheid structures in the occupied Palestinian territory. Under the prosecutor Karim Khan, initially the situation in Palestine was not a priority. Only after October 2023, the prosecutor showed his attention for Palestine. His request for arrest warrants came in May 2024, when Gaza had already been devastated, over 36,000 people had already been killed, and 1.7 million of people had been displaced. Even then, the investigation scope was limited. Some of the most documented crimes were excluded: genocide, torture, forced displacement, just to mention a few. The investigation failed to address crimes committed before October 2023, also in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. This selective framing implicitly legitimized the false narrative that atrocities began only after October 7, ignoring decades of structural violence and persecution. By excluding senior Israeli military officials, the prosecutor also reinforced the myth of the most moral army. Most concerningly, the arrest warrants did not produce any deterrent effect. Two factors, in my view, largely explain the failure in relation to the deterrence: the ICC's law hesitant approach and the hostility to the court by powerful states. Trump administration imposed sanctions on the prosecutor, her deputies, judges, and Palestinian NGOs. These measures have already weakened the ICC capacity to function. Software providers have suspended their services. US-based lawyers and groups have ceased cooperation with the court and also with legal representatives of victims. Even requests for arrest warrant against senior officials like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich have been delayed because of the sanctions. In the very next few days, Trump could sanction the institution itself. That could be a final blow to the institution's existence. We expected a strong reaction by the ICC state parties. However, Gaza genocide proved once again that European states' support to international justice is driven only by political convenience. Many of the ICC members, including France, Germany, and Italy, that had applauded the court's action in Ukraine, condemned the court for investigating crimes in genocide. EU institutions, which now consider the ratification of the Rome Statute as essential requirements to become a new EU state party, have not put in place any effective mechanism to reduce the impact of the sanctions on the court and its staff. So it's now clear that EU states are willing to sacrifice the entire international justice system to shield an ally. However, despite the politicization of justice, despite the attacks and threats to everyone engaging with the court in relation to the situation in Palestine, we have decided to continue to engage with the court, to document international crimes and submit all the evidence and legal analysis to the office of the prosecutor. In Raji Surani own words, we have no right to give up. The very intensity of the assault on the ICC proves how dangerous accountability is to those who rely on impunity. To abandon the pursuit of justice would be to betray every Palestinian victim of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crime, and to betray the principle that all human beings are equal before the law. Distinguished members of the jury, we are not naive. We are fully aware that the end of the settled colonial regime will not arrive through the International Criminal Court. We are fully aware that the ICC is imperfect, too slow, too cautious, too vulnerable to political pressure. But even in its fragility, it remains one of the few tools to resist the normalization of impunity. The court, alongside the national investigation under universal jurisdiction, offers one of the few remaining instruments capable of challenging this cycle of impunity. For Palestinian victims, this investigation is more than a legal process. It's an affirmation of their humanity, of the simple truth that their lives and suffering matter. Distinguished members of the jury, we kindly invite you to cooperate with the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court by transferring all the relevant evidence you may have, and we kindly invite you to raise awareness on the crucial role of Palestinian civil society organizations working to establish the truth. Without the tireless documentation of Palestinian civil society organizations, no international investigation would never have been possible, as the ICC staff or investigators had never set foot in the occupied Palestinian territory. Thank you very much for your attention.